Friends, I want you to think about two people. They are the same age, they grew up in the same city, they went to the same school, they had the same opportunities, the same starting point, the same 24 hours in every day. 10 years later, their lives look nothing alike. One of them is building something meaningful, growing, leading, surrounded by people who trust and respect them, making decisions with confidence, sleeping peacefully at night. The other is stuck, busy but not productive, trying but not moving, always feeling like life is happening to them instead of for them. What made the difference? Not talent, not luck, not connections or money or the right timing. The difference was their habits. Not the big, dramatic habits that look impressive on the outside. The quiet, daily, invisible habits of how they think, how they respond, how they treat people, how they take responsibility for their own life. And the truth that most people never discover is that these habits can be learned by anyone at any point in their life. Friends, today we are going inside one of the most important books ever written about human effectiveness. A book that has sold over 25 million copies across the world. A book that has been read by presidents, CEOs, Olympic athletes, and ordinary people who simply decided they wanted an extraordinary life. This is the story of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And by the end of this video, you will understand the exact framework that separates people who merely exist from people who truly live. Stay with me. This one is different from any book we have covered before, because Covey does not just teach you what to do, he changes how you see yourself and the world around you. Welcome to the 30-Minute Mentor, where every book gives you the power to think, understand, and change. Here, we do not just listen to books, we reinvent ourselves with every page. Introduction, the paradigm shift. Friends, before we learn the 7 habits, Covey asks us to do something first. He asks us to question how we see the world. He calls this a paradigm. A paradigm is simply the lens through which you see everything. Your assumptions, your beliefs about how things work, your mental map of reality. And here is the thing about paradigms, most of us inherited ours. From our parents, our school, our society, our experiences. We did not consciously choose most of our beliefs about success, relationships, work, or what we deserve. They were given to us, and we have been living by them ever since without ever stopping to ask, are they true? Covey tells a story that stays with you. He was on a subway in New York one quiet Sunday morning. The train was calm. People were reading, resting, looking out the window. A man boarded with his children. The children were loud, wild, running between seats, disturbing everyone. The father sat there, eyes down, completely disconnected, doing nothing. Covey grew frustrated. Finally, he turned to the man and said, quietly, trying to be polite, "Sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you could control them a little more." The man looked up and said slowly, as if coming back from somewhere far away, "Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. We just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago. I don't know what to think, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either." In that single moment, Covey's entire world shifted. His irritation vanished, his judgment dissolved. Compassion flooded in. He wanted to help. He wanted to do anything he could for this broken family. Nothing about the situation had changed. The children were still loud. The father was still distracted. But Covey's paradigm had shifted. And with it, his feelings, his attitudes, his behavior, everything changed instantly. This is what Covey calls a paradigm shift. And he says, all lasting personal change begins here. Not with new habits or techniques, but with a new way of seeing. Because if you try to change your behavior without changing your paradigm, you are like a person trying to reach a destination using the wrong map. You can try harder, walk faster, push yourself more. But if the map is wrong, you will never arrive. And this is exactly where most self-help fails people. It gives you techniques, strategies, morning routines, productivity hacks, all of it grafted onto an unchanged paradigm. Covey says that is building on sand. What he offers instead is something deeper. He calls it a move from the personality ethic to the character ethic. The personality ethic says, if you learn the right techniques, scripts, and strategies, you can appear successful, influence people, get what you want. The character ethic says lasting success comes from who you fundamentally are, from integrity, from honesty, from contribution, from the quiet alignment between your inner values and your outer actions. The 7 habits are built entirely on the character ethic, and they are organized in a specific arc, from dependence to independence to interdependence. Let me explain what this means and why it changes everything. The 3 stages of growth. Friends, most of us begin life completely dependent. As children, we rely on others for everything: food, safety, love, direction. As we grow, ideally, we move toward independence. We learn to take care of ourselves, to make our own decisions, to be responsible for our own outcomes. Most personal development stops here. The message of most success books is be independent, be self-reliant, you are enough, you do not need anyone. And independence is important. Covey honors it. The first 3 habits are entirely about building independence. But Covey says independence is not the peak. It is not the destination. The highest level of human effectiveness is interdependence. Interdependence means understanding that we live in relationship with others, that the greatest achievements in human history came not from lone individuals, but from people who learned to collaborate, trust, communicate, and build together. Interdependence is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is choosing to combine your strengths with the strengths of others to achieve what neither of you could reach alone. Habits 1 through 3 build your private victory, your relationship with yourself. Habits 4 through 6 build your public victory, your relationships with others. Habit 7 is about renewal, keeping the whole system alive and growing. This is the architecture of the book, and now let us walk through it one habit at a time. Habit 1, be proactive. Friends, between every stimulus and every response, there is a space. In that space is your freedom, your power, your ability to choose. Most people live as if that space does not exist. Something happens and they react. Someone is rude to them, they become angry. A plan falls apart, they feel hopeless. The economy shifts, they feel powerless. They have allowed external events to determine their internal state. They are what Covey calls reactive. Reactive people say, there is nothing I can do. That's just who I am. They make me so angry. If only things were different. Notice the language. It removes responsibility. It gives control to something outside themselves. Proactive people are different. They understand that between every stimulus and every response, they have a choice. Not always a comfortable choice, not always an easy one, but always a choice. Proactive people say, let us look at our alternatives. I can choose a different approach. I choose how I respond to this. I am responsible for my own feelings. Covey gives us a powerful image here. He says, imagine 2 circles. The outer circle is your circle of concern. Everything you worry about lives here. The economy, the weather, what other people think of you, global problems, your neighbor's behavior, things you have feelings about but no direct control over. The inner circle is your circle of influence. Everything you can actually affect. Your actions, your words, your habits, your attitude, your decisions. Reactive people spend most of their energy in the circle of concern, worrying about things they cannot control. Their energy goes out and comes back nothing. They feel drained, anxious, helpless. Proactive people focus their energy inside the circle of influence. They work on what they can actually change. And something remarkable happens. As they do this, their circle of influence begins to grow. Friends, think about your own life right now. Where is most of your mental energy going? Into things you cannot control or into things you can? Covey says proactivity is the foundation of everything else. You cannot build a meaningful life on a reactive mindset. Every other habit depends on this one. You are not a product of your circumstances. You are a product of your decisions. That is habit 1, and it begins with a single, quiet decision to stop waiting for the world to change and to change yourself. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Friends, Covey begins this chapter with something unusual for a success book. He asks you to attend your own funeral. I know, stay with me. He asks you to imagine clearly, specifically, that you are sitting in the back of a room, and at the front someone who knew you is speaking, then another person, then another. 4 people in total, a family member, a friend, a work colleague, someone from your community. What would you want them to say? Not what you think they would say if you died today. What you want them to say. What kind of person do you want to be remembered as? What difference do you want to have made? That image, that future, is your destination. And habit 2 says, begin every day, every decision, every action, with that destination in mind. Covey says all things are created twice. There is a first creation, the mental blueprint, and a second creation, the physical reality. A building is first an idea in an architect's mind, then a blueprint, then a physical structure. A life is first a vision, then a set of daily choices, then a reality. Most people skip the first creation. They just live, reacting, drifting, doing what is in front of them. And one day they look up and realize they have been busy climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. They were efficient, but not effective. They moved fast in the wrong direction. This is why Covey asks us to develop a personal mission statement. Not a list of goals, not a 5-year plan, but a deeply considered statement of who you are, what you value most, and what you want your life to stand for. Think of it as the constitution of your life, a fixed reference point that guides every major decision you make. When you have a clear mission statement, decisions become easier, because every choice is measured against one question: does this align with who I am trying to be? Without one, every decision is made in the fog of the moment, by mood, by pressure, by whatever feels most urgent right now. Friends, Covey says, if the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster. Take time, perhaps for the first time, to decide what the right wall looks like for you. Habit 3, put first things first. Friends, Covey asks a simple question here. What is the one thing, if you did it consistently and excellently, that would make the greatest positive difference in your life? Now, are you doing it? For most people, the honest answer is no. Not because they do not know what matters, but because the urgent always seems to crowd out the important. Covey gives us a powerful tool here, a simple grid called the time management matrix. It divides everything in your life into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1, urgent and important. Crises, deadlines, medical emergencies, these demand your immediate attention. Some time here is unavoidable. Quadrant 2, not urgent but important. Relationships, long-term planning, health, personal development, learning, rest. This is the quadrant of proactive living. Nothing here is screaming for your attention right now, but everything here shapes who you become. Quadrant 3, urgent but not important. Most interruptions, most meetings, most phone calls, most notifications. They feel important because they are pressing, but they rarely contribute to what truly matters. Quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. Mindless scrolling, gossip, time-wasting entertainment, pure escape with no real restoration. Here is the brutal truth Covey reveals. Most people live in quadrants 1 and 3, reacting to what is urgent, confusing busyness with productivity, and they steal from quadrant 2 to do it. The most effective people in the world, the ones who seem to have more time, more peace, more results, live primarily in quadrant 2. They are proactive about what matters. They invest in relationships before they break. They maintain their health before it fails. They plan before the crisis hits. And this requires one crucial skill that most people find deeply uncomfortable: the ability to say no. Not rudely, not lazily, but firmly, gracefully, to things that belong in quadrant 3 and 4, so that you can say yes to what belongs in quadrant 2. Covey says you have to decide what your big rocks are, the things that matter most, and you schedule those first. Everything else fits around them. Because if you fill your jar with sand first, the big rocks never fit. Manage yourself, not your time, yourself. Friends, take a breath. We have just completed your private victory, the first 3 habits that build your relationship with yourself. Proactivity, vision, priority. These 3 habits, practiced daily, will change you on the inside. But Covey says, inside change is only the beginning. Because we do not live alone. We live in relationship, in family, in teams, in communities, and the greatest victories of your life will not happen by yourself. They will happen through other people. The next 3 habits are your public victory, and they begin with one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of human relationships. Stay with me, because what comes next will change how you deal with every person in your life. Habit 4, think win-win. Friends, how do you approach a conflict? When you want something and someone else wants something different, what is your default mode? Most of us were raised in a world of scarcity thinking. The idea that there is only so much success, only so much recognition, only so much reward, and if you win, I lose. This creates the most common human interaction mode: win-lose. I get what I want, you do not. And on the surface, this can feel like strength, like winning, but Covey shows us the devastating long-term cost. When you consistently take from relationships without giving, trust erodes. When you defeat people instead of solving problems together, resentment builds. When you fight for your position instead of seeking mutual benefit, creativity dies. Win-lose is a short-term strategy that destroys long-term relationships. And since your life is built on relationships, it ultimately destroys your long-term success. Then there is lose-win, the opposite trap. This is excessive accommodation, always giving in to keep the peace, always sacrificing your own needs to avoid conflict. People who live here accumulate buried resentment that eventually poisons everything around them. Win-win is different from both. It is not a compromise where both people give something up. It is a creative search for solutions where both people genuinely gain. It requires abundance thinking, the belief that there is enough success, enough recognition, enough reward in the world for everyone, that your success does not threaten mine, that together we can create something neither of us could alone. Covey says win-win is not a technique. It is a character trait. It comes from a deep inner security, knowing your own worth, so you do not need to diminish others to feel valuable. Think about the most important relationships in your life right now. Are they win-win, or is someone consistently winning at the other person's expense? That answer tells you a great deal about the health of those relationships. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Friends, Covey says this is the single most important principle in human communication. And most of us do it completely backwards. Think about the last important conversation you had. While the other person was speaking, were you truly listening? Or were you already preparing your response, thinking about your point, waiting for your turn, listening only enough to find the gap where you could jump in? If you are honest, probably the second one. Covey calls this autobiographical listening. We filter everything we hear through our own experience. We evaluate, probe, advise, and interpret, all before we have genuinely understood what the other person is actually saying. And the result, the other person does not feel heard. The real problem never gets addressed. The conversation ends and nothing has truly been communicated. Covey contrasts this with empathic listening. Listening not just with your ears, but with your eyes, your heart, and your full presence. Listening to understand, not to reply. He gives a beautiful metaphor. He says, most of us have been taught to listen the way a doctor might examine a patient, but a doctor who skips the diagnosis and goes straight to the prescription, who prescribes glasses before properly examining the patient's eyes. We would call that malpractice, and yet that is exactly what we do in conversation every single day. Friends, think about the most important relationship in your life: your partner, your child, your closest friend. When they speak to you, do they feel genuinely heard? Or do they feel like they are competing with your opinions, your advice, your need to fix things? Covey says the deepest human need after physical survival is the need to be understood, to be truly heard, to have your experience acknowledged. When you give someone that gift, when you listen not to respond but to truly understand, something profound happens. Walls come down, trust opens, and suddenly the other person becomes willing to hear you. Seek first to understand. Then and only then you will be understood. Habit 6, Synergize. Friends, synergy is the habit that makes 1 + 1 = 11. Not 2, not even 3, but something far beyond what either individual could produce alone. Covey defines synergy as this: the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When two people who think differently, who have different strengths and different perspectives, genuinely collaborate, they do not just add their contributions, they multiply them. But synergy is rare, because it requires something that most people find deeply uncomfortable. It requires valuing difference, not tolerating difference, not managing difference. genuinely valuing it as a source of creative strength rather than a problem to be resolved. Think about how we typically respond to someone who sees things differently from us. We feel challenged, defensive. We want to convince them we are right. We see their different perspective as an obstacle. But Covey says, a different perspective is a gift. It gives you access to a reality you could not see from where you were standing. He uses the metaphor of two eyes. Each eye sees from a slightly different angle, but together they create depth perception, something neither eye could produce alone. That is synergy, and it requires everything the previous 5 habits have built: proactivity, vision, priority, win-win thinking, and empathic listening, all working together. When those conditions are present, something extraordinary becomes possible. Problems that seemed unsolvable suddenly have solutions. Teams that seemed stuck suddenly find momentum. Relationships that seemed strained suddenly find new strength. The highest form of human cooperation is synergy, and it is available to anyone who creates the conditions for it. Friends, we have covered 6 habits. 6 powerful, interconnected practices that build you as an individual and connect you meaningfully to others. But Covey says without the 7th habit, all 6 will slowly decay. Because you are not a machine. You cannot run indefinitely without renewal, without restoration, without care. The 7th habit is not a bonus chapter. It is the foundation that keeps everything else alive. Do not stop now. This final habit, it might be the most important thing you carry home from this book. Habit 7, sharpen the saw. Friends, Covey tells a simple story here. Imagine you are walking through a forest. You come across a man furiously sawing at a large tree. He is sweating, struggling, the saw barely moving. You ask, how long have you been sawing? He says 5 hours, and I am exhausted. You look at the saw, it is completely blunt, not a sharp edge anywhere. You suggest, why don't you stop for a few minutes and sharpen the saw? Then it would go much faster. The man looks at you with desperation and says, I cannot stop to sharpen the saw. I am too busy sawing. Friends, how often are you that man? Working harder with a blunter and blunter tool. Too busy to stop. Too urgent to rest. Too pressured to invest in the one thing that would make everything else easier. Covey says the 7th habit is about preserving and enhancing your greatest asset, yourself. Not as a luxury, not as a reward after everything is done. As a discipline, a regular, non-negotiable investment in the 4 dimensions of your nature. Physical renewal, exercise, nutrition, rest. Your body is the instrument through which you experience and engage with life. A dull, depleted body creates a dull, depleted life. Mental renewal, reading, learning, writing, studying, challenging your mind. Great minds are made, not born, through the consistent practice of engaging with ideas that stretch and expand your thinking. Social and emotional renewal, meaningful connection, service to others, deep conversations, genuine relationships that nourish rather than drain. Covey says service to others is the most healing of all human experiences. Spiritual renewal, clarifying your values, connecting with your purpose. Prayer or meditation or time in nature, whatever practice reconnects you to the deepest, most essential part of who you are. These 4 areas are not separate. They are interlocking. Neglect one and the others weaken. Invest in all 4 and you become more than the sum of your parts. And here is the beautiful truth about sharpening the saw. It is the habit that makes all other habits possible. A proactive person who is exhausted becomes reactive. A person with vision who never rests loses the clarity to see it. A person who gives everything to relationships with nothing left for themselves eventually has nothing left to give. Renewal is not selfishness. Renewal is the source of all lasting effectiveness. Conclusion. Friends, let us come back to where we began. 2 people, same age, same city, same school, same opportunities. 10 years later, completely different lives. Now you know what made the difference. Not luck, not genius, not the right connections or the perfect timing. 7 habits. 7 quiet, daily, invisible practices built on character, not technique. On being, not just doing. On understanding that the life you live on the outside is always a reflection of the person you are becoming on the inside. Let me walk through them one final time as a compass you can carry. Be proactive. You are not a product of what happens to you. You are a product of how you respond. In every moment, there is a choice. Choose. Begin with the end in mind. Know where you are going before you start moving. Define your mission. Decide what your life will stand for. Then let every decision answer to that. Put first things first. Give your best energy to what matters most, not what shouts loudest. Say yes to your big rocks. Say no to the sand. Think win-win. There is enough for everyone. Your success and mine are not in competition. Seek solutions where we both thrive. Seek first to understand. Before you speak, truly listen. Give people the gift of feeling genuinely heard. It is one of the rarest and most powerful gifts you can offer another human being. Synergize, embrace difference. Collaborate. Build things together that neither of you could build alone. Let 1 + 1 equal something extraordinary. Sharpen the saw. Invest in yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Not someday. Not when things slow down now, because you cannot give what you do not have. Friends, Covey wrote this book because he believed something deeply. He believed that effectiveness is not a personality trait you are born with. It is a character quality you build, one habit, one choice, one day at a time. He believed that every human being, regardless of where they come from, what they have been through, or how far they feel from where they want to be, carries within them the seed of something extraordinary. But seeds need tending. They need the right conditions, the right habits. And now you have the blueprint. The only question that remains is the most important one. What will you do with it? Friends, do not try to change everything tomorrow. Pick one habit, just one. The one that called to you most loudly today. Practice it this week. Let it settle into your bones. Then pick another. 7 habits, 7 weeks, a different life. It is not a promise of perfection. It is a promise of direction. And in the right direction, every step, no matter how small, is progress. Drop a comment below and tell me, which of the 7 habits do you need most right now? Is it being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, putting first things first, thinking win-win, seeking to understand, synergizing, or sharpening the saw? Tell me. I read every single comment, and I would love to walk this journey with you. And if you want to keep reading and growing, if you want more stories from books that change the way you see your life, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss what is coming next. Because at Bookpedia, the next book is always waiting. And that next book might be the one that finally unlocks everything. Thank you for being here today. Now go and begin.